All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Kris Gethin podcast. Again, we are in a hotel lobby just upstairs, so you may hear a little bit of background noise, but we did an episode yesterday and it was really, really good. I listened to it after, it didn't pick up that much noise. And your attention is going to be on this man here, Mr. Siim Land. Been wanting to do this podcast for quite a while now. I know we've been in contact for a little bit over the past 3 or 4 years now, but we've never been able to meet in person and get this done. So thank you very much for being here, brother. Really, really appreciate it. I know it's a busy time for you here, but we are at the Biohacking Summit here in Amsterdam. My first time here, really enjoying it so far, and I'm about to enjoy it even more now I'm having Siim Land on the show. So Siim, like you are, I hate to say it, one of the few people in the biohacking industry that is in great shape. You know, you obviously work out, you know, and, you know, that leads to my first question here. You know, you see a lot of people at the expo here and a lot of these biohacking events, and it seems to be a lot of people that are really motivated on the new technology, the new shiny object. However, I don't know if these people are always active. Of course, I'm generalizing here, but do you think this is something that is missed a little bit, where people look for the new technology? And I know that you've studied anthropology, where, okay, we know that there's a lot that we can learn from our ancestors and ancestral wisdom, and we should have that first and foremost. But do you think people get a little bit distracted by technology and the new biohacks that are coming out today and not looking after the fundamentals of working out, which we know is associated with longevity?
Yeah, well, generally I agree that even just, you know, the average person outside of the biohacking community, like they're not in the best shape. And I think with the biohackers specifically, they might be a little bit hyper focused on, like what kind of supplements do I need to take? What kind of, gadget, what kind of new technology is going to give me some of the, results that they're after, which usually would be like, weight loss, longevity, better cognitive function, better biomarkers, whatever it is, all of those things will improve with exercise. Like right now, we don't have anything that is as powerful as exercise when it comes to longevity. Like there's no pharmaceutical that is more powerful than that. And obviously for weight loss, you can't eat whatever you want and still lose weight. You need to practice some form of restriction, whether that be calorie restriction or certain food restrictions, whatever it is. There is no, magic pill right now. And I think many people in biohacking, I guess they get into biohacking because of, having certain health issues or other, let's say, shortcomings in their health, and they might not have the background of traditional health and fitness. So they get immediately into the biohacking, and then they get sucked into this world of more advanced biohackers, so to say, that people who are already, like Ben Greenfield or whatever other people who are already doing the fundamentals, and they're already like focusing on the more advanced things. So they get sucked immediately into this vortex of, like, they skip the fundamentals a little bit and they go more into the advanced subjects, and they miss out on a lot of the fundamentals, such as, how do you diet properly, how do you exercise, sleep, and all those other things. So I guess they just skip a few of the first steps, and I think that's what, I and you, we all promote, that you need to still focus on the fundamentals a lot, like healthy diet, exercise, getting in shape, because those actually will give the biggest bang for your buck in terms of the results, whatever the goal is actually.
Yeah, and you do see in some of these like blue zones like Okinawa, where they study these people where they may not actually go to the gym and work out, but they don't really have seats. They're just standing and sitting like 30 to 50 times a day, and they're centenarians. So that is like their resistance training, and it's helping with their bone density, helping with their balance, because usually when people get a little bit older, they may lose their balance, break a hip or something. And I think it's very interesting that you said, like in the biohacking world, a lot of people did have health issues, and I've noticed that. And it's the same in like athletic performance or bodybuilding. People have got into it because maybe they were bullied at school, or they had, lacking in confidence, and they get into bodybuilding, but then they don't really work on the mental health or the PTSD that they got that from school, and they're just creating this shell by working out, but really not working on their health as such internally.
For sure.
And one of the things I think is fascinating that I really like about you as well, and I'd love for you to explain how people can do this from an athletic side as well, is that I remember, some years ago, thankfully, you sent me your book on autophagy. And a lot of people, especially in athletic performance, think, well, I can't fast or I can't restrict my feeding windows because I've got to put on muscle and I've got to perform. So you're obviously in great shape. How do you do it? How do you incorporate your fasting strategies? How long do you do it and how frequently do you do it? And how can the people that are watching this incorporate it into their routines?
Right. So I think, fasting can be quite amazing for overall health, and there might be some longevity benefits as well. I don't think it's like inherently like superior to like a very healthy regular way of eating. Like it might help with some aspects of confining your eating window that helps you to achieve a calorie deficit more easily. So it's like a diet adherence tool. But I personally do think that there are like some unique effects as well from the circadian rhythm side. So obviously, if you are already healthy, then you don't necessarily need to have some sort of a very advanced fasting window or something. Just some of the basics are already good enough, like, don't eat immediately before bed, maybe don't eat immediately after waking up, and try to limit some of the snacks during the daytime and to have like more regular meals. I think that will already, give people 80% of the results instead of the average American who, eats from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to bed. So there is some benefits to having like a smaller eating window, I think, for everyone, regardless if they're trying to build muscle or longevity or just even regular maintenance routine. From a muscle building side, then yes, obviously having more frequent ingestions of protein throughout the day is more superior for muscle growth, because you stimulate muscle protein synthesis, and there's like a certain limit of protein that would reach the maximum muscle protein synthesis, which is around like 30 grams. So if you are trying to maximize the muscle growth, then yeah, you would want to have like, for like most people, the research suggests is, like 4 times a day is enough. So like 4 meals, if you're not doing fasting, is like the maximum you would get for like, the average person for muscle growth. Now, the way I do it is that I have 2 protein ingestions during the day. So the first one is gonna be usually like a protein shake around like 11 a.m. actually, or 12. So it's gonna be like before my workout. The reason I do that is because, working out fasted is more catabolic. Like you are, it's gonna be harder to build muscle, and you will break down more muscle tissue as well if you're like, especially if you're like more advanced with strength training or something. If you're like a beginner, then yeah, like it doesn't really matter. Like whatever you do, you're gonna see results. But if, the more advanced you get, then the more like careful you need to be with your training and meal timing. So that usually in the past, when I did 1 meal a day, then I was kind of stuck in a plateau, because you just need more protein more frequently to support the results. So that's when I transitioned over into the second protein meal, which is the protein shake before my workout. And yeah, like in the book I talked, which I called targeted intermittent fasting, which is like regular intermittent fasting, but you have like a protein shake before the workout. And then after the workout, I'll have like an actual meal, usually in the dinner. So it's gonna give me like, two protein surges for the day. To maintain muscle, then yeah, you could do like 1 meal a day as well, but it's harder to build muscle and, progress in the strength training aspect. But if you are doing, let's say, not like that, then the regular 16 and 8 method is amazing. I think that's probably like the best balance between muscle building and like some of the benefits of fasting. Like you fast for 16 hours, then you have 2 meals, maybe like an additional protein shake as well. So like third protein ingestion. I think that's a very balanced way to like do intermittent fasting and build muscle as well. And whether you need to do it depends a lot on the goal and situation. Like for the elderly people, I wouldn't suggest doing a very tight eating window, because they need to have more protein more frequently, because it's harder for them to maintain the muscle tissue. So for them, having like either like a meal replacement shake with some protein, or just having more frequent meals or a snack is more suitable.
Okay, and do you do that like 7 days a week?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, when I'm traveling, for example, sometimes I'll have like the hotel breakfast. So I'll have breakfast, but then I'm not gonna eat anything during the day, and then I'll have dinner. So I always still do, usually eat like once or twice a day. So I never like have multiple meals. I just kind of, I don't know, I don't like it, or I'm just so used to the fasting that it's, I guess, more suitable for my metabolism.
Okay, cool. And the one thing that I wanted to ask as well, we know that like the stricter form of fasting, like what you suggest, or maybe like Dr. Sachin Panda or Dr. Jason Fung. What about people that want to do like a more controlled fast? Because they are just focusing on, they just want to build muscle. They're not really concerned about burning fat. Like, do you think there's a place for that person to have maybe essential amino acids during that fasting window, or maybe and glutamine possibly? Or do you think no, it should just be water until you have like your protein shake or your meal, and that's it?
Well, technically, I don't really think it matters that much. So like, the essential amino acids, they do have amino acids, but they don't have like significant amount of calories. And I guess it's just the daily fasting window is already so short, then it doesn't really matter that much. Like you could even have like whatever, like a coffee with milk or cappuccino or whatever in the morning. It's in your fasted window, but I don't think it like really matters in terms of the final outcome.
Right.
Like within the 24-hour window, then what matters most is like the total calorie intake and the protein intake, and whether or not you consume like artificial sweeteners, amino acids, or milk in your coffee or MCT oil. Depends, like what's your philosophy, or what's your like, what are your opinions about that? And I think the differences are so small probably that it doesn't really matter at all.
Okay.
Between those strategies at all.
It's good to hear that then, because I take amino acids, essential amino acids during my fasting. So that's good to hear. And the one thing that, like, and I'm asking you this question because I'm suffering with sleep problems at the moment. I had mold toxicity in 2014, and the first symptom that I had was sleep. Like it really broke up my sleep very bad. I was in India again recently, and I feel that I may have picked up mold toxicity again. I don't know. I just done some tests last week, so we'll soon see the results. But I find it hard to believe that I would have got it again. I was staying in a completely different area, but who knows? For those that are watching this and they're trying to improve their athletic performance, they're trying to burn fat, build muscle, of course recovery dictates their performance and how, and longevity as well. What are the strategies? Because there's so much information out there, you should take melatonin, you shouldn't take melatonin, and you should eat before bed or you don't eat before bed. What are the strategies that you implement and suggest to help with the quality of someone's sleep?
Right. Well, some of the like most basic fundamentals are like the bedtime routine. So what do you do before bed? Obviously, the biggest thing that may interfere with that is the artificial light that suppresses melatonin production. But even then, there's a lot of mental stimulation you get from just looking at the phone. So even if you are wearing like the blue blocking glasses, or you don't have like a lot of bright lights, but you're scrolling the phone, then the mental stimulation still keeps your brain active and engaged. And I think there are like studies looking at just the scrolling.
It's like a dopamine fix.
Yeah, and when it comes to the different methods of using technology, than like playing video games or something that is more when you have to actually be engaged with it, then that's worse for the sleep quality rather than scrolling the social media. So that's less bad than playing video games, but it's still bad because you're like especially if you're watching the news or something, like there's another crisis somewhere. So it's you're keeping your brain very in this active and semi stressed out state as well. So an hour before bed, trying to minimize the bright light exposure, but also minimize just mental stimulation. I'm not the best at that. Both of us were like we have our own businesses, we're like constantly checking emails and stuff like that, so it's hard to like tell exactly when we stop doing that. But at least an hour before bed, trying to minimize, at least try not to do something that requires a lot more attention, like answering some emails or something like that. Second of all, I think when you like take a little bit step back, then the daylight exposure to sunlight and bright lights during the daytime is also very critical. So when you get exposed to sunlight in the morning, then that near infrared light actually stimulates certain proteins in your brain that actually help you make melatonin at night. So you need to align your circadian rhythms, the day and night cycles of your body, already in the morning to help with the natural diurnal rhythm of melatonin and cortisol. So having like a large cortisol spike in the morning is like some sort of a time bomb that you stimulate the cortisol in the morning, and then it offsets this natural diurnal rhythm that would also facilitate greater melatonin production in the evening. So bright light in the morning after waking up, maybe some physical movement. Caffeine intake is actually good in the morning because it signals the body that it's daytime, gives you a little cortisol spike. And then in the afternoon, when let's say the spectrum of wavelength from the sun becomes dimmer and less bright, then slowly start to wind down, minimize the bright blue lights. And funny enough, melatonin isn't only regulated by the light, but also food. So your gut actually makes, during a fasted state, it makes 400% or 400 times more melatonin than in a fed state. And that's why making sure that you don't eat very close to bed, I think, is very important as well, because melatonin isn't only made by the pineal gland in the brain, it's also made pretty much by all the other cells in the body as well, and the gut. So that's where, for the best sleep, some people vary. Some people actually want to or need to have some food before bed, because otherwise they just can't fall asleep. So there's some variance between people, but I guess a large meal before bed isn't the best. So either a smaller snack, some snack that has protein, maybe some foods that contain melatonin, like dark cherries and prunes and pistachios are very high in melatonin. And optimally having a larger, postponing the large meal for at least 4 hours before bed would be the best. But I guess some people are fine if it's 2 hours before bed as well, and maybe a small snack for some people before bed. For supplements, then I do think that melatonin supplementation is very good. At least in studies, it does help with sleep. And I guess it's better to take melatonin than to not sleep. Even if you, let's say, develop some psychological dependence on it, then it's better than sleeping pills, and it's better than not sleeping or not getting the good sleep. So as a short-term fix, it's obviously worth it. In the long term, there doesn't appear to be any negative side effects as well. So it's safe in that sense, especially in moderate doses. Doses between 0.1 to 3 milligrams are generally studied to be safe, and with no side effects. I guess I've never met a person who takes 10 milligrams every night anyway. So it's the larger doses, they might have some contraceptive effects, at least in 75 milligram doses they used in the 90s as a contraceptive. So in very large doses, 75 milligrams, the melatonin has contraceptive effects, because you produce a lot of melatonin when you're a child and a teenager. You produce 10 times, 20 times more melatonin when you're in your teenage years compared to your adulthood and your elderly years. So there's actually a massive gap in the amount of melatonin that we need. So melatonin isn't just for the sleep, it's also very powerful antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, and regulates the immune system. And when you are a teenager, you make around 1 milligram per night naturally. But if you're an adult, you make only 0.3. And when you're an elderly person, you make 0.1. So the elderly people, they sleep less, they sleep worse, they sleep shorter. But it's not a good thing. It's not a natural thing. It shouldn't be natural. It actually accelerates their aging because they don't have the melatonin that would enable them to sleep. So I personally believe that taking melatonin as a supplement is a longevity supplement as well, because of the massive antioxidant benefits of melatonin. And like I said, we have just a gap, at least 0.5 milligram gap of the melatonin that we made as a teenager versus what we make as an adult. And there is some trend, or at least it's a hypothetical trend right now, that all the age-related diseases start, in your 40s and 50s, when your melatonin production is very small compared to your teenage years. And when you're a teenager or a child, then they're very healthy, they don't have any diseases, their body is very able to recover and very just disease-free. And I personally think that a lot of it is because of the melatonin as well, like just because your body has such a large amount of melatonin made every night, it just repairs and heals the body. But as an adult, you start to lose that gradually. So like a smaller, 0.3 milligram melatonin every night isn't just for sleep; it's also like as an antioxidant and longevity supplement. But for the sleep purposes, then doses of up to like 1 to 3 milligrams are also safe. I wouldn't recommend going above that. Generally, like a less is better with that. But yeah, any dose between 0.1 to 1 milligram and 3 milligrams it has been shown to improve sleep quality as well. Of course, there are some other things that as well depends, I guess, on the neurotransmitters of people. So like, are they more dopamine dominant or serotonin dominant? Some people who are more dopamine dominant, like me, like if you are into like entrepreneurship and business or whatever thing that requires a lot of drive and stuff, then you are probably more dopamine driven because of dopamine is just what motivates you and keeps you like going, whereas serotonin is more like calm and relaxed. So if you are dopamine dominant, then you might be naturally deficient or lower on serotonin, for example, which is probably some of the reason why those driven people also have a hard time to like wind down a little bit. So in that case, carbohydrates are the best dopamine or the serotonin boosting food. Just having like carbohydrates that releases serotonin and makes you very like relaxed in the evening, especially. So those people probably don't do the best with like a low carb diet. Like I eat carbs, it's better for performance as well, but it's better for like sleep as well, I think. But there are like some supplements maybe for boosting serotonin, like tryptophan, maybe like even GABA. But glycine is one of those supplements that is pretty much does everything good. It's not only for it helps to sleep a lot, lowers body temperature, increases GABA, makes you more relaxed. But it also is anti-inflammatory, and you can take it in the daytime as well. So it's one of my favorite supplements. I take it for sleep and take it for other benefits as well.
Yeah, speaking of that, on that subject as well, like what I do, because I'm definitely very dopamine dominant, I'll try to do the tryptophan as opposed to just at night, like 1,500 milligrams. I'll just like split it up throughout the day, and it's helped a little bit changing that protocol. And while you're on the subject of glycine, like I've noticed with a lot of the posts that you've been doing, that you seem to be quite a fan of glycine and NAC in that combination, correct?
Right.
Or do you take that then throughout the day yourself? And could you explain what the benefits are? Because we're hearing a lot about this combo lately.
Yeah, well, glycine and NAC are both the major, let's say, precursors to glutathione, which is considered the body's master antioxidant. And glycine is actually also the rate-limiting amino acid for making glutathione. So, both NAC and glycine alone will increase glutathione, but the combo appears to be better. And the reason why I'm like a very big fan of the GlyNAC combo is because we just have actually, at least like a dozen human clinical trials on elderly people showing that the GlyNAC combo consistently and repeatedly reduces the hallmarks of aging, reduces these age-related, let's say, declines like muscle strength and walking speed, cognitive function, and other like aspects that are related to aging. With age, you see a decline in glutathione levels as well, and decline in immune system function, decline in antioxidant defense, and the GlyNAC combo just helps to raise it back up. So that's why I'm such a big fan, because it's I would say it's actually the most evidence-based longevity supplement out there, because there's at least a dozen human clinical trials showing that it reverses hallmarks of aging, whereas you don't have that with NMN or nicotinamide riboside. You don't have those studies with those compounds. Even like rapamycin, which is obviously a pharmaceutical, but you don't have human clinical trials showing that it actually reverses hallmarks of aging in humans, whereas it does have the same with the GlyNAC combo. So right now, I think it's the most evidence-based supplement, over-the-counter supplement that exists for like reversing or slowing down aging. Whether or not it works for younger people is up to debate. Like the glutathione levels start to decline after the age of 45 or generally around that time. So if I were in my 40s and 50s, I would for sure take it. But I sometimes take it just as like a precautionary measure as well, because you don't never want to play catch up when it comes to aging. It's easier to slow it down and prevent it than to reverse it or catch up to it. So I don't take it every day because there could be the issue that too large antioxidants also blunt some of the positive effects of exercise, especially muscle hypertrophy, which is also very critical for longevity and anti-aging. So you don't want to take like NAC after a workout, for example, because it's the thiol-based antioxidants. The same with vitamin C, for example. Those can blunt some of the inflammatory response to the exercise, which actually mediates the benefits of the exercise. So I take it usually on like the rest days, or if I have like some sort of a sickness or cold or something like that, where I want to boost my immune system. And the time to take, so the doses actually are pretty large in those clinical trials. They take like 100 milligrams of glycine per kilogram of weight, which is like 7 to 8 grams per day, and the same with NAC as well, 98 milligrams per kilogram. So it's like 6.8 grams of NAC, which is very large dose. I've never actually taken that large for NAC. I've taken more than that for glycine, but not for NAC. So if you are in your 40s and 50s, then maybe taking 6-7 grams of NAC plus 6-7 grams of glycine, I would for sure test it out, at least based on the trials, that the larger dose is what's needed. Like you don't get the same results with a dose of 2.4 grams, for example.
Right. So everybody that's younger out there needs to start working harder right now so they can afford it when they get older.
Right.
So this is a great answer, because somebody just asked me this yesterday in the expo, because we know that NAD levels do decline as we get a little bit older as well. Like I'm 49 years old now, of course I take it. However, somebody came up to me yesterday who was 24 years old and said, should I take NAD? How would you respond? Would you respond the same way? Well, maybe take it for preventative measures, or don't you see any benefit until maybe after the age of 40?
Yeah. With NAD, it depends, I guess, on their NAD levels. So you can measure NAD levels in the blood. I guess the issue is that this test can be quite sensitive, so it's dependent of your inflammation status, your like exercise burden and sleep status and those things. If you're like sleep deprived, you're over-exercised, you've changed time zones, or you drank alcohol, whatever, those things will deplete your NAD levels, at least in the short term. So it depends when you do the test. But if you are experiencing a lot of the symptoms of low NAD, like low energy, sleep problems, and some poorer biomarkers as well. So, and you do everything else right, like the fundamentals, then yes, you could try to experiment with the NAD boosters to see if it makes a difference. I do think that even as a young person, you can benefit from NAD supplementation, but I guess it's more valuable in the situations where you are experiencing like circadian mismatch or inflammation or sleep loss, something like that. I personally use it only in those situations where I had a bad night's sleep, or if I'm just traveling and changing time zones. For the elderly, and I would start to take NAD on a consistent basis, starting my 40s for sure, because there is a decline in NAD levels with age. A healthy lifestyle probably maintains the NAD levels for a lot longer. So if you exercise, you eat a good diet, you have a good circadian rhythm, those things will maintain the NAD levels naturally as well higher. But I mean, there is going to be some decline anyway. It's just how fast you're able to slow it down. So that's where the NAD supplementation in the 40s would already be quite worthwhile to take every day. And which of the boosters work best? So for the people in their 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s, yes, the NMN and nicotinamide riboside are probably better because they yield a greater response in raising NAD levels generally. But what you want to do, or what you need to have as well, is the salvage pathway activated. So there's different pathways of NAD production. There's the de novo biosynthesis pathway, which uses tryptophan, then there's the price handler pathway that uses niacin, and you get those from primarily dietary sources. And the last one is the salvage pathway, which is the recycling pathway. And this recycling pathway is something that works all the time. And whenever you are raising NAD, whether that from the food or the NMN or nicotinic riboside, that NAD will have to go back to the salvage pathway. So if your salvage pathway, the recycling pathway, isn't working, then you're just losing a lot of the NAD. And most of the NAD that you are producing every day comes from the salvage pathway. Like, I guess the approximate amount is like 90% of the NAD comes from the salvage pathway. So it doesn't matter how much NAD you take if you don't have the salvage pathway working properly. So how do you have the salvage pathway active? So there's the enzyme called NAMPT, which is the rate limiting step in the NAD salvage pathway, and this enzyme is activated by AMPK, which is energy stressor sensor that gets activated with exercise and calorie restriction and intermittent fasting. So these positive stressors activate the AMPK that forces the body to recycle or enables the body to recycle the NAD. And there's obviously certain nutrients as well, like all the polyphenols work on that same pathway. So those dietary polyphenols and these phytonutrients, those work through the salvage pathway as well. But the key part for the salvage pathway is still the circadian rhythm alignment. So the NAMPT enzyme is SIR2-in-1 dependent, and SIR2-ins are circadian rhythm proteins. So you need to have pretty much a robust diurnal rhythm and a consistent one as well, that in the morning some sunlight, get a good cortisol spike in the morning, and in the evening a nice increase in melatonin, and go to bed at like a normal time. That will maintain the circadian rhythm, the natural human circadian rhythm, and that will also enable the NAD to be recycled.
Right, got it. Yeah, one of the things that's helped me, especially I've noticed it more recently because I've been traveling a lot, and like I said, my sleep is suffering at the moment, doing whatever I can to kind of fix that. By actually having various forms of NAD at the moment is just really helping me with my energy levels, even though I'm looking at my sleep score and it's not the best at the moment. So I'm definitely feeling the positive effects, especially at my age as well. Now, I know that we seem like that we're bouncing all over the place here, but it's just like I could probably speak to you for like 3 hours here, so I wanted to compact this in. But you've just come out with a book that's really great on minerals, and this is something that, it's become a bit of a craze over the few years, where so many brands are coming out with various hydration products, and rightfully so, because like I've noticed with clients that I work out with, I notice their performance is down a lot of the time, maybe not because of their sleep, maybe not because they haven't eaten right that day before, but usually because of hydration, and they just think that drinking gallons of water will help. And I noticed when I first went to India in 2012, like I was sweating all the time and I was drinking loads of fluid, but I didn't feel like I was getting hydrated.
Right.
But until I started drinking coconut water, and I was like, okay, now I feel so much better. I'm not having to drink as much volume. Now, have you noticed that throughout the world today that we are deficient in minerals? And is it because of the lifestyle? Is it because of the food supply? And what can we do? What is in balance and what is out balance to help improve our hydration? And what are the positive effects that people can find when they are adequately hydrated with the proper minerals?
Right. Well, as a general trend, at least 1 out of 3 people are deficient in some minerals, and it can be up to like 10 mineral deficiency, or deficient in 10 minerals. And when you look at the statistics, then the biggest deficiency is actually boron. So boron is it's not an essential mineral actually, but it's considered a conditionally essential mineral. And what boron does is that it actually helps to utilize vitamin D. It improves bone density, and it also through vitamin D and other mechanisms, it also improves sex hormones like testosterone and estrogen. So boron is something that many people aren't getting in their diet, and usually you get it actually from like dried fruit, dried prunes, raisins, some beans and legumes. So the boron is part of the plant cell wall, and you don't really get it from animal foods unless you're like chewing the bones or something. So usually most people aren't eating, adequate or not getting adequate amounts of boron. And boron is actually would be like one of my go-to supplements for testosterone increasing, because boron lowers sex hormone binding globulin, which then would free up more testosterone. So sex hormone binding globulin binds to free testosterone or binds to testosterone, so you end up with lower free testosterone. So by inhibiting that, you will see like a greater liberation of the testosterone. So that would be actually, usually like people say like zinc is important for testosterone, which is important as well, but I would say the boron is probably more effective and more important. But there are many other minerals as well that at least the Western diet, the industrial diet, is deficient of, like magnesium. Because if you refine foods like refined flours and refined oils, you remove pretty much all the magnesium and all the other minerals as well. So that's why many people in the Western world might be, at least like the average person who doesn't eat like all different kinds of fruits, vegetables, meats, fish, and those kind of things. The average person who eats a very pretty refined diet, even in the developing countries, those people will be deficient in a lot of the key minerals, because the refinement process removes a lot of them, like magnesium. They say that around 40% of people or so, or 50 or something like that, even 75 in some places, are deficient.
Yeah, definitely in the
magnesium.
US, 75.
Yeah, and magnesium is pretty much the master mineral. Like it's a coenzyme for many of these different processes inside the body, and catalyzes like 300 different enzymatic reactions. And I call it the master mineral because it's kind of central to the metabolism and energy production. Without magnesium, you can't produce ATP. And there's many other minerals as well in the electron transport chain involved with producing energy. But magnesium is one of the top deficiencies because the refinement process generally. And you can get magnesium from seafood, pumpkin seeds, some vegetables, and those kind of things. But the soils themselves are also deficient in magnesium because of erosion and pesticide use. So like supplementing magnesium is a very simple one, especially with people who are stressed out, or if they have some metabolic syndrome or some poor glycemic control, because stress reduces magnesium, high blood sugar levels reducing magnesium, sleep loss reduces magnesium. So it's a very common deficiency, and it doesn't have really like an upper limit. You could take, the RDA is 420 milligrams. You could take even 1,000 milligrams in some cases. Nothing's going to happen. You probably, the worst thing that could happen is like diarrhea or something, but it's not a particularly dangerous compound. Of course, I wouldn't say that you need to take 1,000, but 400 milligrams every day for the average person would be probably like a net positive, just for the benefits on like sleep and stress and raising the magnesium status.
Okay, so all right, boron. I'm taking note of that. I used to take boron years ago, and I haven't taken it for a while, so that's going to be something that goes back into my supplement routine. But anyway, Siim, really, really appreciate this time. I know you're very, very busy, but I'm glad that we made this happen. For those that are listening and watching, if they want to find out more about you, purchase your books, maybe ask you some questions, where can they find you? And of course, I'll put links to everything that we've spoken about in the show notes as well.
Yeah, so my website is siimland.com, and I'm Siim Land on all the social media platforms.
Okay, and that's SIIM, for those that don't want. But thank you very much. Really, really appreciate your time here, my friend. I'm really glad that we made this happen. So that is the Kris Gethin podcast for this week in Amsterdam. And for myself and Siim Land, we are out.